The agenda this week surveyed the potential for an AI named Polly to read the Ontario electorate, heard why advocates want to make school supports for students with ADHD an election issue, and considered efforts to reform policing in the capital city. The agenda's Week in Review now begins assessing the government spat with the Auditor General over the state of the province's books. Can you take us through, in as economics 101 a way as possible, the nature of the disagreement on the pension issue? The government clearly thinks one way. This, Auditor General obviously thinks a different way, and the result is a multi-billion-dollar disagreement. What's the nature of it?
So the nature of it is, how do you treat assets in a pension plan, right? And I think the nature of it is, you have assets and you have liabilities. There is government responsibility in part for those assets and liabilities. And I think the issue is really one of consistency. That if she was willing to take on the liabilities with the government, then you also need to, in that kind of balancing, also account for the assets. But I think, I think we want to step back a little bit from this and talk about where this Auditor General has kind of stepped out beyond her expertise. And I know on some economic issues, I've had some questions about her claims.
Like what?
For example, when she decided that she wanted to calculate how long it would take to pay off government debt. And that was maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And governments don't have to pay off debt because, as we economists like to say, governments are infinitely lived, right? So it's not a relevant concept. But again, I think it was something that would grab a headline. And so I think similarly with this issue, she's crossing a line between actuarial expertise and accounting, and she slipped there. And I have to agree with Martin. She slipped there and didn't acknowledge it. And I think, to a certain extent, we have an Auditor General here who's cried wolf. And when she raises something that's, I think, more legitimate, like the issue around the borrowing around the Fair Hydro plan, she's got a little bit less credibility because we've heard this before from her.
We'll lead on that. The expression in politics is she's too far out over her skis. You think she is?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm going to stay on the exact issues that we're talking about. And when you look at, for example, even when in valuing the pension assets, there's a footnote in the CD Howe commentary which shows that the discount rate the government is using for the liabilities is higher than what the pension fund is using. All of that to say in English is that the government is overstating the assets they have in the pension. But I think it's really important for...
Sorry, to what end?
To make it look like they have more assets available to them.
And therefore the books look better.
Absolutely.
For them. Okay.
So there's 3 big things going on. All 3 of them work in this government's favor. I think the big advantage for this government, however, is the fact that the criticisms from the NDP and the Conservatives is very disingenuous, because they too, in their budgeting and their platforms, are also using the same accounting approaches. I think it's very important for the viewers to understand that the books that the government is presenting and that the other 2 parties have also blessed in their platform development, they're not giving an accurate representation. Just think for a minute that there's a structure they created, and within that structure, this trust, they have an asset. What is the asset that this government has created? Is the right to get these additional subsidies from future ratepayers. What kind of an asset is that?
This is the hydro argument now.
Yeah, it ties the hands of future governments. But secondly, and most importantly, and I think most offensive, is the idea that by using this creative approach, the cost to finance this creative approach is $4 billion higher than had the government simply taken those liabilities and put it on their own books.
But as a political problem, it's gone away.
As a political problem, it's gone away.
Well, that was the point, wasn't it?
And they're successful at it, and we know the hydro costs have come down. It's no longer one of the top concerns of Ontarians.
Let me, with Martin, follow up on one thing you said, which is it is also a fact that the Progressive Conservatives and the New Democrats have put forward, to the extent they have, the NDP a lot, the PCs not very much, spending plans based on the same arithmetic, based on the same accounting principles that the Liberals are now being criticized for. And when the Tory finance critic was asked the other day, are you therefore, when you get into government, if you get into government, going to abide by the Auditor General's ruling, there was a, well, we're not answering that question yet. So really, is everybody kind of covered in mud on this one?
Everybody. To use Waleed's term, a footnote. The New Democrats are actually not endorsing the Fair Hydro plan. They say they'll scrap it, to their credit, I guess. They also say they will reduce hydro costs by 30%. They haven't said how they'll do that.
Well, buying back Hydro One is what they've said.
They said hydro, which has nothing to do with raising or lowering costs, as you know. So that requires billions of dollars more to buy back a $9 billion corporation. I heard the sigh. I heard the sigh.
You heard the sigh.
But the progressive conservatives are on record in their platform, which they issued and then Doug Ford suspended, as saying that they would endorse the Fair Hydro plan, and they accept the Auditor General's numbers. They don't accept it. They're using it. They're basing their platform on it. So everyone will have the same numbers.
But they haven't said they'll do their budgeting if they become government to satisfy the Auditor General.
No, but they have said, Doug Ford has said, the leader of the PCs, that he would call in an independent outside group of auditors to audit what's going on. So all that complaining that the Liberals brought in somehow a stacked panel of experts to deal with the auditor, looks like the Tories are going to do their own outside
Does
panel.
that to you look like a lack of faith in the Auditor General's ability to go line by line through the books?
I don't think that's a fair inference for me to draw, but it certainly allows people to say, well, why can't the auditor do it? And that reverts comes back to Sheila's point, that I think there is a bit of a credibility problem that attaches to the Auditor General.
Everyone at the moment saying Ford, Horvath, win. 1, 2, 3. Is that what you say? Is that what Polly says?
What Polly says is right now, yes, Ford majority government. Now, it is important to say our margin of error is still like 3.5 on this, and we like it to be at 1.2. And it's because, think of it as regular season hockey versus playoffs, right? So in the regular season, you're getting the hardcore fans. Playoffs, everybody's got an opinion, right? So once the election is called, then we get to see everybody coming in and talking about the issues. But in the beginning, the polling we've done so far, it's people who are engaged or more people who are more interested in politics. So yes, we are definitely seeing Doug Ford in the lead. In the popular vote, we're seeing Kathleen, well, up until the debate that happened this week, we had Kathleen win in number 2 for the popular vote, but Andrea Horwath in the seat count, because Andrea Horwath's support is more clustered into ridings.
She's got a more efficient vote.
She's got a much more efficient vote, and largely because the dental plan's really working for her. It's really working in those ridings because of the way we draw ridings. We draw ridings according to boundaries where we want to make sure underrepresented groups have their own representation. So, areas where the income is lower, will be a riding here, and we'll group people according to income, according to urban and rural, so that the rural always gets represented, First Nations, so they get represented. So when you have an issue that appeals to people in ridings as a riding issue, then you're more likely to get that clustering.
Well, let's pursue that. If Horwath and the NDP equal Dentacare, that's what you're picking up, or what Polly is picking up, Win equals what, Ford equals what at the moment?
Doug Ford is tax savings. He is 100% getting, and he really distinguishes himself that way. The other two have the social programs. So we've got Andrea Horwath with dental care and a daycare plan. And we've got Kathleen Wynne with a daycare plan, but not so much on the other kind of social programs. So her vote is more spread out. But the other two are really competing on social programs, whereas Doug Ford has a clear, I'm going to save your taxes agenda.
Yeah, so if you want your taxes lowered, you got one place to go. If you want more social programs, you got two places to go.
That's right.
So this is a classic let's split the vote situation.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
that clearly puts the government in a tougher spot than it does the other two parties, right?
Absolutely.
So far I'm on the right track. Okay,
yeah.
I'm getting the hang of this here. Now, the Liberals have their fully costed program. Whether you like it or don't is another question, but there it is in the budget. It was passed just the other day, and it's now the law of the province. The NDP brought out, I think, 3 weeks ago or so already, 2 or 3 weeks ago, a fully costed program as well. The PCs have not.
That's right.
Does Polly pick up any sense that the public is perturbed about that?
They don't appear to be at the moment, no.
Do we know why?
Well, we don't know why right now. It's basically that his tax saving program is really appealing to that population. They feel that the Liberals, he's definitely appealing to the group that feels the Liberals misspent over the last term. And, you know, I think they just want change, and nobody's really inquiring about
for the people, for the members of the media who are demanding that the PCs bring out a platform, a fully costed platform, the PCs obviously know what you know, that the public is not all that, you know, they're not banging the doors down to, they're not fussed about it. So we probably ought not to expect that we're going to see anything anytime soon.
Well, I don't know. I'd have to ask the PC party. I'm not in with them, but I think that they're doing fine as they are right now. So until we see a sea change and people wondering how, for instance, the transit infrastructure is going to get built out without a carbon tax.
Which the other parties may point out.
Right.
Right. Young people, who do they favor at the moment?
Doug Ford.
They do?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And you wonder about that, because typically we don't think of young people voting conservative, but this is a different kind of conservative. He's a populist leader, anti-establishment. You know, when he talks about the $6 million man and he's going after the elites, and that, from what we can see, appeals to young people. They also like the fact that he's taking matters into his own hands. He's got his Ford Nation TV. That's appealing to this demographic. So, whereas older generations might think, well, that's a little bit off, you know, that...
I only think it's off. Listen, I'll confess I'm a little bit surprised by that, only because the government has been offering, you know, free post-secondary education for lower income households, which you would think would be appealing to young people and their parents. The NDP has something on offer related to debt forgiveness, you know, for post-secondary education. And yet Ford has been silent on that, and yet he's the guy for them.
Yep.
So far.
Yeah, I think that we haven't seen that they're focused on those social programs. They're focused on change.
Okay. What does the data tell you about what the #1 issue for the broadest swath of voters is right now?
Anything around energy and taxes seems to be really, every time Mr. Ford, he's got sort of the triumvirate, right? He's against the carbon tax, he's going against the Ontario Hydro. There's a definite theme there that he's tapping into that is really resonating, and he must know that, because all he has to do is bring that conversation back to energy and taxes, and that's a win for him.
I hear from time to time that there are still plenty of medical professionals who are kind of unwilling to acknowledge ADHD as a serious mental health issue or condition. Do you hear that too?
I certainly do. I'm a general practitioner, and I focused my practice on mental health and primarily school-based issues back in '94. And over the 25 years, there have been huge advances and changes, and ADHD diagnosis is real. And the apprehension, I think, often of primary care physicians is a comfort level in understanding it and how they can support it with the medical side of perhaps pharmaceutical intervention without running into the diversion, apprehension, and fears around the medications that are often used.
Natalie, I do not want to invade your family's privacy here on television, but you are here, and you know, I'm going to ask you a question. If you don't want to answer it, that's okay.
Okay.
Once you discovered you had to deal with your son's ADHD, did you put him on meds?
Yes,
I did. How did that go?
It was fine for a little while, probably 6 months, and then he had an extreme adverse reaction to the medication.
How did that manifest itself?
He started saying, "What if I hurt myself? What if I hurt you?" That sort of thing. So there was some suicidal ideation signs. So we took him off, and I think the reason that we ended up down that path was the medical profession that we had was not totally understanding the medication, not totally following up with us on a regular basis.
And your son is or is not on meds now?
He was off for quite a period of time because we were very scared to put him back on. He was 10 years old when that was going on, and it was extremely difficult for our family. So we tried a different type of drug very slowly. We were fortunate enough, because of the way he had the reaction to the medication, we were able to get to see a child psychiatrist who is now managing his medication very well.
And how's he doing now?
Oh, he's doing wonderful now.
Isn't that great?
Yes.
Isn't that great?
Yes.
What do you think turned the corner?
So I think there's a few things. So he's maturing, so that helps. The medication control is definitely helpful. The third thing that I would say is significant was a change in a school. So we had a boundary change, so he was fortunate enough to go off to a new school. And I think the educators at the new school, for whatever reason, they have a better understanding of ADHD, how to accommodate children like my son.
Good.
And it's been a wonderful experience for him.
Just curious, if this is genetic, did you test yourself?
So I actually went to Heidi's conference in the fall last year, and I kept hearing about parents raising kids with ADHD and how difficult it can be, and that 76% of children with ADHD have a parent with ADHD. And that made me start to think, and I ultimately did go get diagnosed a couple days past my 50th birthday. So it was a real aha moment, because I understand now a lot about how my mind works. And
well, what was the verdict when you got diagnosed? Like, you've got
I have ADHD.
You've
yes.
got it too.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You buried the lead there. I didn't know that.
Oh, sorry.
Dr. Gray, go ahead.
I would just love to jump in here, because when I opened Springboard Clinic in Toronto in 2009, taking a look at lifespan ADHD a diagnosis, we expected the majority of patients to be children. But in reality, over half of our assessments now are adults, and generally above average intelligence, and often university educated or university students. So a very important myth to dispel is that because you have a university degree or a professional education, you couldn't possibly have ADHD. Well, that's wrong. The hyper-focused type of support that many people with ADHD can turn on shows how unique and marvelous our brain can be. And having ADHD does not have to be seen as a huge liability when treatment options are employed.
Heidi, can we look at the flip side of this for a second, which is I imagine there are parents out there as well who get the word from their kid's teacher that, you might want to look into having your kid diagnosed for ADHD because
No, they can never say that. They can say, here are the signs, the symptoms we're seeing, or problems in the classroom. You may want to go to an assessment. An educator can never say.
Can never use the words.
No.
Okay.
No.
But I guess what I was getting at here was, are there parents out? I imagine there are. You can tell me how frequent an issue this is. There are parents who say, no, my kid doesn't have it, because they are afraid of the kind of stigma that comes associated with that diagnosis.
Well, and the stigma around ADHD and the misinformation in the media and the general public is huge. So yes, we get a lot of the backlash. My child is not one of those kids, and no way, no how, and he's just a chip off the old block, which may be very true, right? There's nothing wrong with my son or my daughter. And the stigma causes so many issues, and actually is at the heart, I think, of why schools have not really done anything about ADHD, or the government doesn't understand how it impacts the justice system, the workforce, everything, because parents and families of ADHD still buy into that stigma. They don't talk about their child having ADHD or themselves having ADHD because they're afraid of being labeled a bad parent. When we do our advocacy work and talk to politicians, they say families never talk to us about ADHD, but parents of kids with autism do. Our message to parents is they have to get out there. They need to talk to their elected officials that, yes, this is an issue for them, and it's of interest, and they want the government to do something.
It is a fact that a disproportionate number of racialized communities are approached by the police, questioned, interrogated, have their personal information taken down, and kept in a police computer somewhere. That is a fact. At a recent leaders' debate focused on black issues, Premier Wynne showed up, NDP leader Horwath showed up, Green leader Schreiner showed up, Doug Ford, the PC leader, was not there. But Horwath and Schreiner both said, if I win the election, carding is dead. We end it and we rip up all the records. Premier Wynne said, that makes a nice soundbite, but the story's a little more complicated than that. We have to allow police to follow the leads they think are reasonable and do their jobs. She's obviously not a fan of discrimination, but she said it's not as simple as my two opponents are making it sound.
Yeah.
Who's right?
I think the Premier is closer to the truth. When people say stop carding, I think most of the time they are talking about a system by which information gathered through random stops is stored in police database or in the police officer's memo book. That practice may well be able to be stopped, but the police will say part of their job depends on gathering information. And I think that's the distinction that Premier Wynne is making, that while you can stop a practice, which the government has tried to do with its regulation, you cannot stop the police from gathering information. What we said in Toronto when we tried to develop a policy before the provincial regulation is you should have the ability to gather information in the course of an investigation. But you have no business gathering data and putting it in your computers about people who are not engaged in any activity, criminal activity, that are not suspected of any wrongdoing. You have no business storing data about innocent people. So yes, you need to gather information, but gather information for valid public safety purposes.
Okay, a couple of minutes to go here, and I want to raise two more things. Can a board chair of a police services board be effective if the members of the force over which you have oversight basically think you're hostile to their interests? And I put it to you that I think most of the members of the Toronto Police Service thought you were hostile to their interests.
They didn't think so initially, but when I started asking deeper questions about our model of policing, the break point is 2010, 2011, I wrote a paper for the police board on a different model for policing.
And you got in trouble for that.
I got into trouble for that.
Because you didn't seek the board's approval. You just kind of freelanced that one, didn't you?
That's right.
Yes.
And the good thing is that that paper received wide circulation nationally and became a blueprint for conversation across the country, including the National Summit on Economics of Policing and so on.
But you had to apologize for it. You got your wrist slapped too.
I did. Yeah. I did. And but that's part of, I think, the way in which you move a discussion forward. And I had very heated conversations with McCormack, the president of the Police Association, on the fact that, Mike, we cannot go on the way things were. We have tried all these different softer measures, conversation and dialogue and refining systems, etc. But at the end, I have come to the belief that unless we engage in a transformative change process, we will not get the results, either in terms of better service or in terms of controlling the cost of policing.
Did he agree with that?
No.
He did not?
No. And that's when they began to see me as a not very friendly chair of the police service.
In which case, could you, was your effectiveness, cut down significantly by that fact?
As long as the board was on my side, as long as the public continued to engage in that conversation, I could have carried on. But The board is a very political beast.
You're all political appointees, basically,
We are
aren't you?
political
By the province,
appointees.
by the city.
That's right.
Yeah.
And there's an internal politics, and there are huge interests involved more broadly, from the city hall, from the government, and so on. And as long as you're able to negotiate that political thicket, you can do your job.
And that is the Agenda's Week in Review for this Friday, May 11th, 2018. You can see all of those conversations in their entirety at tvo.org, on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/theagenda, and on our Twitter feed, that's twitter.com/theagenda.
The Agenda with Steve Bacon is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.